Can we begin housekeeping, please?
Thank you for participating in today's meeting. If attending in person, please do not connect to Zoom or teleconference while in the room, and please silence all devices. If translation is provided, click on the globe at the bottom of your screen to select either English or Spanish. Public comment will be taken after each item. If you're in the auditorium and wish to comment, please use the iPads located in the lobby or complete a blue speaker card as available. If you need assistance, please find a South Coast AQMD employee. Speakers may be limited to a total of 3 minutes or less for all agenda items. Times may be shortened to ensure all speakers can be heard. A countdown timer will be displayed on the screen for each public comment. More time will be allotted for Spanish translation that is not simultaneous. For questions or issues on making a public comment, please call the public advisor at 909-396-2432. That's 909-396-2432. Please adhere to the speaker time limit and treat others with courtesy, civility, and respect. Failure to do so can result in your mic being muted or you being removed from the meeting. Be aware that this meeting is being recorded. By participating, you authorize recording of audio and visual content presented during the live event and consent to subsequent use of the recording in the public domain by South Coast AQMD.
Gracias por participar en la reunión de hoy. Si asiste en persona, favor de no conectarse a la conferencia telefónica o Zoom mientras esté en el auditorio y silencie sus dispositivos. Si traducción es disponible, haga clic en el icono de globo en la parte inferior de su pantalla para seleccionar inglés o español. Se tomarán comentarios del público después de cada punto. Si se encuentra en el auditorio y desea dar comentario, utilice los iPads ubicados en el vestíbulo o complete una tarjeta azul según esté disponible. Si necesita ayuda, localice a un empleado de South Coast AQMD. Los comentarios pueden ser limitados a un total de 3 minutos o menos para todos los puntos de la agenda. El tiempo límite puede ser reducido para que todos los comentarios puedan ser escuchados. Se mostrará un temporizador de cuenta regresiva en la pantalla para cada comentario público. Se asignará más tiempo para traducción al español si no es simultáneo. Si tiene preguntas o problemas sobre cómo hacer un comentario público, llame al asesor público al 909-396-2432. 909-396-2432. Respete el tiempo límite y favor de tratar a los demás con cortesía, civilidad y respeto. De lo contrario, es posible que se silencie el micrófono o que sea retirado de la reunión. Tenga en cuenta que esta reunión está siendo grabada. Al participar, usted autoriza la grabación de audio y contenido visual presentado durante el evento en vivo y da su consentimiento para el uso de la grabación en el dominio público por parte de South Coast AQMD.
Good morning and welcome to the April 3rd, 2026 meeting of the South Coast Air Quality Management District. And I'll call this meeting to order. And let's start off with a Pledge of Allegiance. Supervisor Mitchell.
Thank you very much, sir, for the honor. If you're able, please stand. Place your right hand over your heart as we say the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States
of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Supervisor. Roll call, please.
Mayor Locke Dawson, absent. Senator Delgado, absent. Supervisor Hagman. Supervisor Mitchell.
Present.
Council Member Nazarian, absent. Supervisor Nguyen.
Here.
Vice Mayor Olmos, absent. Board Member Padilla Campos, absent. Supervisor Perez, absent. Mayor Rodriguez.
Here.
Dr. Redlin.
Here.
Vice Chair McAllen.
Here.
Chair Cacchiotti.
Here.
And we have a quorum.
Thank you very much. Opening comments. Board members, do you have any opening comments? Supervisor Nguyen.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just want to, it's very exciting for me. I want to first thank Wayne and staff. I want to thank the chair and vice chair for helping us to get a solution on both our composting and our RNG projects. I know it's been tricky, so I am so appreciative of all the efforts of everybody thinking and trying to come up with a solution. And so really, really exciting. And, you know, I know you heard it before. This is going to help us reduce 90% of our VOC emissions. That's practically 40,000 cars off the road. The LFG to RNG facility will also deliver, 54% reduction in our NOx, 81% reduction in our SOx, 36 reduction in our VOC as well. And so again, on behalf of the County of Orange and our residents, we appreciate you. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor. And Supervisor and Mayor Rodriguez, thank you for the tour. Great tour, educated us and staff. Great work. This was really an effort by everybody coming together. I see Supervisor Mitchell.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. I just want to announce with regard to agenda item 13, I do not have a financial interest, but I am required to identify for the record that I'm a supervisor for LA County, which is involved in this item. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor. Mayor Rodriguez.
Thank you and good morning. I just want to echo the sentiments shared by Supervisor Nguyen, but want to take a moment to thank her for her leadership and also for the staff and our chair and vice chair, again, echoing the sentiments of just coming together. I think the tour was a catalyst to really move forward, get a common sense of understanding of the issues and the urgency, and just to see how this was worked out so promptly. Wayne, thank you and the team for working so diligently to make that happen. It'll be a great benefit to the County of Orange and all the cities therein. So appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. Any more comments?
Mr. Chair,
Oh, yes.
do you want us to do the recusal now for the
Bay, what would you suggest?
consent? Do you want me to do that right now?
We can wait until we call the item.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thanks, Bay. Vice Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I understand that someone in the audience has a birthday on Monday,
Is it, I heard it was her 39th birthday, Larry?
39th, or yeah, something like
Larry,
that.
I mean, Wayne, do you know who that might be?
Susan Nakamura.
Susan? Let's give Susan happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Susan. Number 39. Happy birthday to you, Susan. Wayne, do you have any comments besides that birthday?
I do have some comments. Thank
Right.
you, Chair. First, I'd like to note a correction to agenda item number 3, fiscal year 2025-26, year 28 of the Car Memorial Program. The first line in Table 5 for AAA Farm, Inc. should have a recommended award of $2,313,187 instead of $1,367,750. I'd also like to really demonstrate or play a short video clip from CBS News that we had last month on the technology showcase after the March board meeting. So if we could show that.
Fire trucks, school buses, pickup trucks, and lawn equipment are all reimagined as low-emission or no-emission vehicles. It's all part of a showcase by the South Coast Air Quality Management District, aiming to provide workers and the community with cleaner alternatives to equipment that's traditionally diesel fuel.
Pollution is a big issue because it affects all of our health. But once you transition to this equipment, not only reduces pollution, but for example, a car or truck lawn equipment, you'll save hundreds, if not thousands of dollars a year on gas. And just on the maintenance operations, you save another several hundred to $1,000. So it protects the workers, your communities, and you're saving money.
The event also demonstrated an air monitoring drone designed to detect pollution and measure air quality.
How about that?
Great work, Wayne. Staff did great work. Great work, staff.
Thanks, Chair, and thanks to all the board members who were able to participate, who always make themselves available to really promote what it is that we do. I think it's given us a lot of ideas that we want to come back to the board maybe later this spring or perhaps early summer on how we can expand and build on these. And some of these ideas were really promoted by Board Member Rodriguez. And so we're going to come back and try to identify some of those aspects as well. The next item that I wanted to touch on is the Governing Board Student Intern Program. This week, we provided each of you with a list of the prospective student interns. You may select up to 2. The chair and the vice chair are able to select up to 3. You should also have 2 alternate selections. And if you could, please email or phone Cindy Bustillos with the selections by Tuesday, April 14th. As we've said before, there are 2 tracks for the program. The first track is 11 weeks, and that begins May 26th. And the second track is 7 weeks, and that begins on June 23rd. And then finally, I'd like to note that there will be a special meeting of the governing board for the budget workshop. That'll be on April 10th, and we'll hold the governing board budget workshop after the administrative committee and no later than 11 o'clock a.m. And thank you, and that concludes my comments.
Thank you, Wayne. Supervisor Perez.
I'm not sure. Good morning, everyone. I'm not sure if it's been said, but happy Good Friday. And obviously, we are celebrating Easter this weekend. And the Lord will be rising once again on Sunday. Day to celebrate. Just want to bring that up. And I appreciate the work that we've done with regards to my district, my area. But obviously, we still have some more work to do, and the winds have begun. So I'll state that out loud because I'd like to invite you out there, especially now, because that's what I think you got to see for yourself. They started last night. They're going on right now, and they'll be on and off. That's just the difficulties when to go. But just know that this is the month in which it gets pretty heavy. It's because it's the festival season. Besides that, it's windy season. And that's when people begin to panic a bit because of what they see in the air. And if you obviously heard me out in the past and recall, I'm like a broken record because I need to bring this up every single meeting because we need to demonstrate to folks back home that we're actually, you're listening, hopefully. And obviously start doing some mitigation that are maybe low-hanging fruit. I know that CVAG, Tom Kirk, put in a phone call, Wayne. I don't know, maybe this week of some sorts. He told me he was going to call, or maybe called Caltrans or something, but about something along the freeways to try to stabilize the dirt, the dust there. I'm not sure if he called you or if he called Caltrans, but he said he was going to call somebody. But I want to make sure that you all know that it's going to begin. And whatever we can do, even if it's something small. I know we got studies. I know we got other things going on. That's long term. How about stuff that maybe we've done in the past, something that is a pilot project? Maybe we identify a location somewhere out there in which we can really concentrate on. That would be something that would be helpful. At least folks would say that, you know what, they're actually moving on something. And because folks right now, unfortunately, are losing some faith here. So I just want to bring that up. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor. And again, thank you for the Good Friday wishes. And last night I was at Last Supper services. I have a question for everybody. If you reach out to our Christian and Jewish faith communities, all the faith communities during this holy season, there was a story about the Passover. Does anybody know what book that came from in the Old Testament? As a former religion teacher, I tested a couple of our security guards. They didn't know, I won't mention names. Does anybody recall the story of the Passover? It comes from the book of Exodus from Egypt into the Promised Land. Okay, so let's move on to the public comment period. This is a time for the public to comment on items that are not on our agenda today, but come under the jurisdiction and authority of the South Coast Air Quality Management District. Again, items not on our agenda. So look at our agenda. If it's on there, You'll have a moment later on to comment on it. Do we have any members of the public that want to comment on during this time? When we have one in-house, Thomas, please come forward. Do we have any online? Not yet, Susan. Welcome, Thomas. Go ahead.
Thank you. Thomas Yelenich with the Pacific Merchant Shipping Association. Thank you for the opportunity, Chair, board members, for the opportunity to provide these comments this morning. I'm here simply to thank you and your staff for the excellent work they did hosting the recent meeting on the CAP Plus measures on March 27th. It was a really productive virtual meeting, followed up on the meeting that we had in February, which was hybrid. There was a significant turnout, including from our industry. We look forward to continuing working with AQMD staff and port staff through the development of the CAP Plus measures. And we will be submitting our own comment letter probably next week with some suggestions of our own to focus on a couple items such as having AQMD and the ports seek additional incentive funding to help this transition, working and ensuring that the utilities meet their commitments in providing the infrastructure to support this transition, and incentive ideas such as buying down the cost of hydrogen and electricity. As I'm sure you all know, electricity in Southern California is the highest in the nation. So things we can do to support this transition and make it more cost effective, I hope will accelerate all these things. So again, thank you for the opportunity for these comments and continue to looking forward working with all of you.
Thank you, Thomas. Any more people in the auditorium want to comment at this time on public comment? Seeing none, we'll close the auditorium part. Susan, is there anybody online? Wow, you see nobody online? Give you one more moment. This is non-agenda items, and now we will close the public comment portion of this meeting. Move to the agenda right now. The consent and board calendar items 1 through 27. Are there any more disclosures? Supervisor Nguyen?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm recusing myself from agenda item number 3 because of a campaign contribution from Republic Services within the last 12 months. And then I'm also recusing myself from item number 6 because of a financial interest in Kinder Morgan, Inc., which is materially affected by this item. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Supervisor. Mayor Locke Dawson?
Hi, thank you. Good morning. For agenda item number 3, I don't have a financial interest, but I'm required to identify for the record I'm a member of the California Air Resources Board, which is involved in this item.
Thank you. Any other board members? Is there any public comment on any of the items on the consent and board calendar, Susan?
And just to reiterate, Supervisor Mitchell has already stated that she's a supervisor for the County of Los Angeles for item number 13, but it's just a disclosure.
Thank you. Susan, anybody online? Any more people in the audience would like to comment on any of the consent or board calendar items? Okay, I see a hand raised at phone number 310, last digits, Harvey. Harvey, welcome. Go ahead, Harvey. Which item, Harvey, are you testifying on, and you're on mute?
Okay, I just came in the meeting. I dialed apparently 64, and twice I was living in the meeting and I was waiting in dead air. I called 222. I just called the clerk. They said it was a 9 at the end. Anyway, is public comment closed? Did I miss it?
Yes, Harvey, this is for any items on the agenda.
This is anything. Okay, all right. So I got 3 minutes.
The consent calendar and board calendar, Harvey. Consent and board calendar items 1 through 27.
So you're doing through 31 through the hearings, or only through 14, or what? 1 through 14?
Harvey, listen, 1 through 27. If you want the hearing items, you can wait. We'll get to those in a moment.
Okay, I haven't had a chance to go over everything, but I'll give some feedback on what I do know. This $700 million number 3, and this other stuff that has to do with federal money coming down. The process is in question. It has to be reevaluated, and it should be part of CEQA, and CEQA has control issues. It's going to own and control this stuff. We're developing a new industry here, especially with the war going on, and we don't know what's happening in the future, inflation, etc. So we got $1 billion, another 235 and 700 million. Okay, on these number 4 with I think it's the refuse trucks. Also, the hybrid, forget hybrid. We worked on this with staff in the old days. We were the ones that brought to you doing electric cars and fuel cells like 10, 15 years ago, 20 years ago. And that stuff can be done. We don't need hybrids. We got to phase out fossil fuels, etc. And in reference to the refineries, this one thing here, the monitoring, that we brought this up in 1109.1 refineries, and we're incorporating by reference. It's been purged the February 8th Administrative Committee meeting from 19. It's been purged. We tried to get it, and they're told we couldn't get it. They had to talk to legal. This is outrageous. We've contacted the administrative powers with the state. There's a state Supreme Court law in 12, and we had this with Dr. Burke and whatnot, but this is technology forcing. The summary of that meeting is incorrect. It's full of misinformation. It has to be, and this outrageous, okay, that enough, we need to go to the powers that be and follow whatever is necessary, including sanctions immediately, and to take off the pieces that were followed in 13 and stuff, 23 by environmental groups. So all of these things, the money that's coming down and stuff has to look at CEQA. You can't just go past the socioeconomic, political, and there's been legislation and stuff on this. So I'm anyway. Anyway, so I guess that's it for now. But also there's the UN conference coming up the end of this month in Santa Marta. There's a special meeting of the executive group that has
Thank
to
you for
do with
your
this.
comments, Mr. Edit. This is not an item that's on the agenda.
Thank you, Harvey. And you'll have a moment to testify in matters on the public hearing portion of the agenda. Thank you very much, Harvey. Any other public comment in the auditorium, on the board and consent calendar, or online? Give you a moment to raise your hand. Okay. Moved by Supervisor Hagman, second by Supervisor Perez. Roll call, please. Oh, I'm sorry. Let's go through a vote. Cast your votes and lock it in.
Board Member Rutland, still waiting.
And lock it in.
My cancel request isn't working either for my, I think we're having trouble up here.
Yeah,
He's getting it.
mine we just turned mine off, so
Yeah.
I won't be able to vote. I'm gonna vote yes, besides abstaining on the other two.
Okay, we'll just do a voice vote then.
Babe, what can we do under these conditions with it?
Yeah, we can just do a voice vote.
Okay,
That
great.
would address that.
Okay,
Okay.
go ahead, Faye.
Okay, Mayor Lock Dawson,
Aye.
Senator Delgado,
Aye.
Supervisor Hagman. Supervisor Mitchell,
Aye.
Councilmember Nazarian is absent. Supervisor Nguyen,
Aye.
Vice Mayor Olmos is absent. Board Member Padilla Campos is absent. Supervisor Perez,
Aye.
Mayor Rodriguez,
Aye.
Dr. Rutland,
Aye.
Vice Chair McCallan,
Yes.
and Chair Caccioli.
Yes,
Motion passes 10-0, 3 absent, with Supervisor Nguyen recusing from items 3 and 6.
thank you, Faye. Babe, go ahead.
Sorry, just disclosing, not recusing.
Okay. Perfect, we're clear now. Let's move to the public hearing portion of our agenda, item number 29, and will be kicked off by the inimitable Michael Kraus. Mike, go ahead, please.
Thank you very much. Good morning, everyone. I'm here to present to you our amendments to our proposed rule 1124. 1124 focuses on the aerospace industry, pretty convenient while we have Artemis out on its mission right now. And again, this looks at primarily all the involvement actually with the coating industry, the aerospace coatings. So coatings, solvents, adhesives, all in that grouping, focused in on this rule. Next slide, please.
I'm
This
sorry,
was-
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
I couldn't push my button, but I have to be recused from this item as well.
Okay.
For financial interests in Delta Airlines and General Dynamics, which are materially affected by this item. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor. Does she have to leave the room, Babe? Okay.
I want to recuse myself.
Are we ready to go, Babe? Can we?
Yes, we're good.
Michael, go ahead, please. Thank you.
Thank you very much. All right, this rule was first adopted back in 1979. Again, it focuses on a range of materials used in the aerospace industry. Today, we're focused, however, on some proposed amendments where we're going to be exempting two toxic compounds. One is perachlorobenzoate trifluoride, or PCBTF, and the second is tert-butyl acetate. These were both determined by the state's toxicology agency as have cancer-causing impacts. So it was so really focused attention. We recognize that there are toxics that are typically involved in any sort of operations and process, but these particular ones being used as industries has a more immediate impact when you're dealing with the applications of the coatings and solvents and adhesives. We've been working on this public process for a little while now, close to 2 years, and for working on these rule amendments. Next slide, please. Just wanted to kind of highlight when we talk about exempt solvents. So what are those? So solvents are used actually within the formulation of a mixture. So a lot of coatings and adhesives, et cetera, have things like solids, but they also have a solvent that's involved. And when a solvent, however, is determined not to be reactive or volatile, those are typically, wanting to be used by the manufacturers because that way it will reduce the VOC limit and meet some of our more stringent standards. So a lot of times manufacturers, again, would like to use these exempt solvents to meet those lower standards. However, some of the formulations, again, are involved with PCBTF and TBACT, and there's a heightened concern about that. Our stationary source committee many years ago directed us to sort of focus in on those types of coatings, those applications, and find ways to kind of phase those out. We've already started working on a series of rules. We're trying to attack these sort of individually in order for us to address the individual industry sources and types, because everybody has sort of a different way that they sort of utilize these coatings. So as you can see below there, we've got like the metal industry or the automotive industry, adhesive solvents, et cetera. So this isn't the first rule, and it won't be our last. Next slide, please. More recently, as you might have noticed, that we were going to take this rule to the board last month. However, sort of a couple days beforehand, we noticed as we were kind of going through the rule and walking through its process that we recognized that some of our amendments that we're doing, which are good amendments, these are making the rule a little bit more stringent and more clarity involved, however, kind of conflicted with an existing provision. That existing provision allows for facilities who need to use a higher VOC coating for whatever reason, could do that as long as they apply a control device. So basically drive that coating back down to those lower limits. However, with the new amendments, we kind of restricted the sale of those higher VOCs. So it kind of didn't make logical sense. And we really didn't want to remove, outlaw that provision. So we went ahead back in, we created the wording for that and added even some record keeping requirements as well. So shore up that provision. Next slide, please. Okay, back to the aerospace industry. Again, as I noted before, each one of these industries are kind of unique in their own way, so that's why we wanted to kind of address these individually. Aerospace, I just want to highlight our ones, as you can imagine, are involved with very high-tech applications, and these typically also involve large contracts, possibly with the government, and they involve, a lot of times, these coatings will involve what they call mil specs or military specifications. These are very specific, very exacting. These tend to have to go through a lot of testing, certification, and you're talking about a lot of contracts that last many years. And so we really wanted to be not restrictive of that and provide options for those types of applications. Next slide, please. So in our evaluation of the coatings and solvents and adhesives being used in this specific industry, we sort of found they kind of fell under two bins, and we call these different levels. So one is basically materials that currently don't use these two toxics, or there's immediate alternatives available. So we sort of set up a pathway for those types of materials, and we call them level one. However, there are materials, that either utilize those two toxics, or there's not a lot of substitutes out there available for them, or kind of fall under that mil-spec environment. So next slide, please. So what we came up with for those level 2 is 3 different options for folks to take out there. One would be to apply a air pollution control device, and some of the aerospace industry actually already does because of other toxics that they may be using or trying to drive down VOCs or what have you. So that's involved already. But that seemed like a good solution for a lot of folks. They can continue using those coatings. They continue to use those coatings, particularly in the mil-spec situation. and have those two toxics, but they'd be required to control those. So therefore, we're still being public health protective to them, reducing that risk from the usage of them. The second pathway would be a low use provision. We recognize that sometimes in this industry, those coatings are not used very much, but still, again, needed in their applications. And then the third one would be those pathways by which they might have the usage of these two coatings, or the two toxics, but have alternatives available. Next slide, please. There's another issue as well that we sort of ran into under two of the categories: adhesive promoters and maskants. So these two are not very used in high volume necessarily, but the concentration of PCBTF in particular was quite high in both of those. And these are recognized as very much needed components. They can phase out, and they will phase out of those toxics, but we kind of wanted to give another option for them, and that's called a reactivity limit. So this is an alternative. It's not a requirement. It's an alternative specifically for these two that allows those manufacturers to utilize a different pathway to demonstrate compliance. Reactivity, just so you know, is that when you apply a certain solvent, not all VOC solvents are the same. So some VOC solvents have what's called a high reactivity, others have low reactivity. What is reactivity? That is what is the volatility that actually contributes to ozone. Some have a little bit higher of that contribution, some have lower. This would allow folks to utilize a lower reactivity so it doesn't impact our ozone as much. It's a different way of sort of doing that approach. CARB does this as well as EPA. We do not. We typically use mass-based VOCs. We will continue to use mass-based VOCs. They don't get around that, but this is an alternative for those particular two types of coatings. And again, it's only temporary until they phase up the toxics. And then finally, a technology check, and this was requested of the stakeholders. Don't think this is a good idea. We do think it's a good idea, and then we can check to see how the formulators are working in their transition out of these two toxics. Next slide, please. When it comes to our impact analysis on the environmental side, or CEQA, California Environmental Quality Act, the prohibition of those toxics are health protective. So that's good on the environmental side. We do recognize, however, there will be some modifications at some of the facilities when it comes to controlled devices. So we analyze those, but we don't believe that that's a significant impact. On the socioeconomic side, we looked at the number of costs there. You can see those numbers there. Mind you, we're talking about close to 400 facilities. So on average, we're talking less than $2,000 a year for those aerospace facilities. And of course, we've included that in our socioeconomic impact, which is part of your board package. Next slide, please. So today we're asking a recommendation to determine that this particular rule and these rule amendments are exempt from CEQA, to amend the rule, and then direct us to submit that into the state implementation plan.
Thank you, Michael. Board member Dr. Jamie, questions?
We tend to do this a lot. We care about what happens in the sky, and we don't care about what's actually happening immunologically within the body that leads to harm. And so I just think that we have to really start trying to implement that into how we position ourselves on this board, because I see that a lot. We care about reducing things in the sky, reducing ozone, without an understanding of what can actually happen if we inhale this in the body. So my question really would be, the individuals that handle this material, are we studying their disease states? Do we know what rates of disease they have? What's their rate of cancer? What's their rate of respiratory disease, cardiovascular disease? That would be important to me as a physician.
If I could respond, a lot of the toxics data is generated by various organizations, including NSF, NIH, groups that are really dedicated to understanding human health, what happens within the body. And what we try to do is to look at ways where we can eliminate the exposure, because we know what those health impacts are. We know that if we can reduce that exposure, that we're improving public health. Our focus has always been on reducing emissions. The biological functions, the medical functions, those have been left to other organizations. And then we take it from there. They identify those risks, those challenges, and then we reduce that risk. That's certainly not for lack of caring or understanding what goes on. It really is designed to reduce that exposure risk. I think to address some of the things that you're talking about really would take a tremendous effort if we were to try to replicate and validate a lot of the information that's presented to us. So we do rely on other parties as we move forward, but we always and foremost are a public health agency. And everything that we do, we take under the consideration that it's improving public health.
You know, just a comment following up what Dr. Jamie said. I think it's important, and I know it's not our purview, it's Office of Emergency Environmental Health Hazard Assessment, OEHA, that brought forth this and why we're moving on it. But I think it's important in our presentations that we have maybe a slide or two just about the health impacts, because we know it and we almost get numb to the fact we know the health impacts and everything. We're doing a great, incredible job. But I would like more emphasis, or just, you know, so people are awareness. We create awareness on the public, as Jamie said, something about showing the immunological aspects he's talking about, how it goes, what it impacts in the body. You know, I mean, that's why OEHA came to us with this. But I think it's important. This is a great presentation, but we need a slide or two showing the human body, what's they're inhaling, and where Dr. Jamie could speak to it. Thanks.
Do that.
Dr. Jamie, any follow-up on that? Or?
No, I mean, I agree with what everyone has said. I just think that we have to remember why this organization was created. It was created to be able to impact human health. And I think we chase a lot of numbers, and I think that's important. But I think we also have to understand why we're chasing those numbers. We're chasing those numbers because of the communities that are significantly impacted by some of these molecules that are present within the air. So I just want to make sure that we get back to thinking about that.
Again, sorry to follow up again. And did somebody, Supervisor Perez, go on.
I think there's obviously a direct correlation, and you're absolutely correct. And sometimes we forget that piece of the puzzle. You know, our organization can only do so much. Obviously, when we were created, unfortunately, and even to this day, you know, we still get neglected when we request funding at the state level, and we are trying to build the capacity of staff so that we can continue to think about things like items like you just mentioned, Doctor, and which I think are critical to make sure we form the coalitions that are necessary of entities that exist out there that can do that and can work with us. But this is what we got, right? And every year it gets even harder. Nonetheless, though, I think it is critical that we align the two as much as possible. Because truly, at the end of the day, that's what's going to move people. It's one thing about the numbers, but the other thing about the actual story itself, the context, what people feel, their sense of reality, existence, versus the scientific evidence data that we're always waiting on that takes 2 or 3 or 4 years. I mean, I get that, it's important too, but if someone is telling you, and a group of people are beginning to tell you that there's something wrong in the air because I'm sensing this in my lung, I believe it's in the air, then some way, somehow we need to connect with the Department of Public Health at a county level, whichever level that may be, and begin to ask those questions. What do we have on this? Do we have data on this? What are the numbers? What do you see at Eisenhower Hospital? What do you see at JFK Hospital? How real is this? County of Riverside, have you heard about this concern? Because that's how ultimately we're able to, in my opinion, once again, really move and advance the work that we're doing here, but at the same time, work on the betterment of our society, work on the betterment of one's public health, one's self-help, if you will, too. I think you're right. I think that's been missing. I think that's a level that we don't do enough, but it's also because of not because of lack of willpower or motivation, really. It's just, we just only have so much money. We only have so much resources, so much staff. And I know that they're up to like this. So in any event, those are my comments.
Supervisor Mitchell?
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Dr. Rutland, thank you for elevating that issue. I don't see them here today, but we often have community-based organizations who are here to remind us of just that issue. And, you know, they'll hold up signs of the number of lives lost, you know, as a direct result of what you're talking about, that we're measuring in the air, but what about the human cost? And, you know, I just have to remind us all that this discussion often gets complicated when other stakeholders weigh in, when industry weighs in, when labor weighs in, and then we get caught up in the conversation around economics and the cost to all of us, individuals, small business, everyone, to make these improvements. So it's, you know, I hear you, we hear you. The advocates are typically here. I'm glad that you've joined the board so you can be a constant reminder on this side of the dais. But, you know, let's be honest with ourselves. It gets complicated when other stakeholders begin to weigh in. But, you know, that the AB 617 communities were established through legislation that attempted to prioritize the health, particularly of communities that have disparate impact. So I thank you for raising it and hope that you will continue to raise it and hold us accountable. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Supervisor. Board Member Rutland?
Last thing, I'm not suggesting that we alter our goal. I am just suggesting it's okay for us to tap somebody on the shoulder and say, hey, you might want to go see your doctor to check this out. I think it's cool. I think it's our responsibility to make sure that the public is aware of some of these things. And I got no problem tapping Jimmy on the shoulder like I did yesterday in Arkansas and said, I hear you wheezing and coughing. Why don't you go see this guy I'm about to go talk to about your asthma? I think that's fine. And I think creating programs to do that is just as good. That's all I'm saying.
Thank you, Doctor. You know, last week we had a meeting with the, as part of our outreach to the faith communities with the Episcopal Church of Southern California, and several members of the Bishop Episcopal Committee on Climate Change came. We did a great presentation. One of our slides was on the health impacts. And Wayne was there and some of our staff. And I remember one of the pastors who's the chair of the committee, great pastor. He said, you know, after watching this presentation by you, he says, you know, that really is what moves people's hearts. What transforms our interior heart is seeing a picture of those kids playing soccer, as Dr. Jamie said, wheezing, asthma, you know, just the fact of your heart affecting your entire body on your brain. So we do it, and sometimes we forget, but I think in our presentations too, if we can just add a little more, I know we all know it. Wayne, go ahead.
We can definitely have a slide that talks about the health impacts and why we're taking this action. But I also just want to reinforce and hopefully provide some comfort to the board that every day we have inspectors that are out in the field, that are monitoring communities, that are looking at facilities, ensuring that facilities are in compliance. All of these things that we do, and whether we're dealing with fumigation facilities in Long Beach, dealing with methyl bromide and weighing in on those communities, bringing together medical experts to talk about those issues, it's an issue that we take seriously, and it's an issue that we do on a daily basis. Can we do a better job? Absolutely. So, Dr. Rutland, thank you for pointing that out. We will strive to make sure that we can point out what those health impacts are, because I do agree with what has been said. We do take it very seriously. Everybody on staff takes those health implications, and that's why we're here. But sometimes we may not express it enough, and I think that gets to some of the things that we've talked about earlier, which are how can we do a better job of educating the public, especially in light of so many negative attacks, both on science, on the environment, protection issues, things like that. So we can take all of this and see how we can strive to do better. And I hope you all know that when we're given these kind of challenges, 200% of the time we go above and beyond. So we'll continue to look at this and strive to be better. Thanks.
Thank you, Wayne, and thanks, staff, for all you do every day, protecting all of our health and 17 million Californians that you protect every single day. Okay, any more comments on this item? Discussion? Is there anybody in the public wants to comment? I see Kurt Coleman's hand raised. Kurt, go ahead, please.
Good morning, Kurt Coleman. I'm the Executive Director of the Southern California Air Quality Alliance. just wanted, we've been working with the staff, or at least my members have been working with the staff. My aerospace members have been working with the staff on this rule. And I just want to thank the staff for coming up with solutions that will allow the operations at these facilities to continue and also be fully protective of public health. Specifically, I want to thank Mike Krause and his team, Heather Farr, Sarati Ka, and Sergio Torres Callejas for all the work they've done on this rule. Thank you.
Thank you, Curtis. Any more public comment? Is there anybody in the auditorium want to comment? Nobody else online, Susan? Harvey, go ahead. You've got 3 minutes. Harvey, you're muted.
Hello, am I being heard? Yes.
Yes, Harvey, go ahead, please.
Okay, I'm Harvey Etter. I'm the founder director of Public Solar Power Coalition. I taught solar at UC and community college starting 50 years ago. Okay, health impacts. I was in the hospital in October. About a year before, I thought I had a heart murmur. I never had an EKG. When I had swelling legs, hard breathing and what. Okay, I got heart failure. Okay, 1 million people over 65 get heart failure and they die. Okay, that's what's up. And 250,000 under 55. That's the real. Only about 250,000 get it from lung. And it's PM 2.5 and it's 80-90% of the deaths. It goes right through your lung walls, into your circulatory systems, to your organs, etc. That's it. Okay, this is a death sentence. This is a captured agency. This is murder. And the number that Dr. Piqueras gave out of the Lancet Journal, 200 years out of London, is that there's 1 to 1.5 million deaths each year in this country from air pollution. And that was 10 years ago. Now that's murder. You're a captured agency. They gave a Nobel Prize to Stiglitz in 1982. The
Thank you for
revolving
your
door.
comments, Mr. Etter, but they've moved beyond this particular item.
Thank you, Harvey. No more. I see no more hands raised. We'll close the public comment on this item, and I'll entertain a motion. Moved by Supervisor Hackman. Is there a second? Second by Vice Chair McCallum. Roll call, please.
Mayor Lock Dawson,
Aye.
Senator Delgado,
Aye.
Supervisor Hackman, Supervisor Mitchell,
Aye.
Council Member Nazarian is absent. Supervisor Nguyen is recusing. Vice Mayor Olmos is absent. Board Member Padilla Campos is absent. Supervisor Perez,
Aye.
Mayor Rodriguez,
Aye.
Dr. Rutland, Vice Mayor McCallum,
Yes.
and Chair Cacchiotti.
Yes.
Motion passes 9-0, 1 recusal and 3 absent.
Thanks, Faye. We'll move to item number 30, and I see the presentation tonight will be monopolized by Mr. Krause. Mr. Krause, would you go ahead with number 30?
Sorry about that. Heather is on spring break with her kids. Very good. Okay, so I'm going to be presenting to you proposed amendments to our wood coatings rule 1136. Next slide, please. This was adopted back in 1983, focuses on the coatings applied to wood. Good examples of these would be, say, furniture or cabinets, shutters, etc. We've been in this public process for a little while now with 5 working group meetings. Next slide, please. Okay, so I think I've already touched already on the discussion about like the exempt solvents, but I want to take a stop. I want to stop here for a little bit and talk a little bit further about things that Dr. Rutland had highlighted. And this really is about public health, and it kind of starts out with our air quality management plan. As you know, when the federal government comes up with new standards, these are all based on, with public health officials that have come up with that on the national level. And we analyze those in our plan. And we have we do have discussions about the public health impacts on those. And it helps inform us and guide us to that control strategy, which you start seeing in the rule development process and those rules that are brought to you to the board every month. In addition, we rely on the California Office of Environmental Health Hazard Assessment, or OEHA. That is also it's the state toxicology agency that we know that goes and does periodic an analysis of various toxic air contaminants. And they come up and they conclude whether those toxins have what is considered a short-term impact, an acute impact, right? These are ones that mean coughing in your lungs that hits you temporarily. The more chronic impact, so this is heart and lung, that has a more longer time exposure and impact on you. And then finally, it could be a cause of one to generate cancer in the body, so or carcinogenic. And those are longer frame impacts, depending upon that, again, that exposure of that, but it could be up to like 70 years kind of thing. These are the ones that we're really focusing on in today's amendments, are those ones that we believe over a long time and a long period of exposure could make people vulnerable to getting cancer. So it is a serious issue, and it is one that we have taken serious enough to say that we want to phase them out of these applications. So not just, necessarily reduce the risk, and we are reducing risk, but we also trying to work any ways we can to eliminate. So just wanted to kind of emphasize that. Okay, next slide, please. I think I touched already on the reactivity. The reason this reactivity might be in more usage for this rule as opposed to the aerospace one, where it's just those two categories, this is expanded a little bit further, is because what we found is that the substitutions for those solvents would be water, and we know water and wood doesn't always marry well together. So we do recognize that in a lot of these applications, folks may need to use a solvent, again, one that's still lower VOCs, but not as low VOC as a water substrate would be. So again, we wanted to create that pathway for folks here in this rule. Next slide, please. So with regards to the phase-out approach, again, we have different alternative, again, categories, but eventually those folks will all eventually phase out in this rule amendment. And that's all set into the rule. But we also recognize that a lot of folks here, the manufacturers have already manufactured a number of these products already with PCB, TF, and TBACT. So we wanted to recognize that. So we put in what they're called a sell-through. So they're able to move those products along, sell those. We also recognize the actual users themselves in their own shops might have them basically on their shelf. And we had discussions with them as well. We also recognize there is a, quote, shelf life for those products, but we have a use-through condition as well. So it allows those folks that have them on their shelf to use those up. Next slide, please. We've also agreed it's similar to 1124, a technology check-in. And again, to remind folks what that is, it's to assess sort of the progress that's being made by the manufacturers on the reformulation progress, and to confirm that those alternatives that they believe that they're going to be able to come up with have actually in fruition. And that technology check-in will be around January 2029. Next slide, please. With regards to our impact analysis on the environmental side, again, prohibiting these two cancer-causing toxics is a health protective measure. There's no impacts that are going to be anticipated from the reformulation. On the economic side of things, we looked at that analysis. We basically were comparing, when we talk with the manufacturers, when they manufacture actually with a solvent like PCB-TF, it's actually quite expensive. So when they do reformulate and they end up selling that, they can actually not sell it as doesn't cost as much. But all that's analyzed under the socioeconomic impact, and we don't have any more remaining issues left with the stakeholders. Next slide, please. So our recommendation for this rule is to recognize and determine that the rule is exempt from CEQA, to amend the rule, and again, to submit this into the state implementation plan.
Thank you, Michael. Supervisor Mitchell, any questions?
Sorry, I didn't count my request.
Okay. Any more questions for staff?
Anybody from the public to speak on this?
Anybody in the auditorium want to speak? Rita?
Actually,
I want to hear from the public.
if I may add, before we get into public comment, I did want to note that we did receive a letter opposing this rule amendment last night. The basis of that opposition was that we have a low use exemption in this rule. That exemption has been in place since the 90s. It is really limited toward or directed towards very limited use and incredibly low use of these particular solvents. The opposition letter suggested instead of a low use exemption that you base it on a mass limit, to have a mass limit of less than 1 pound per day of these VOCs. When you back calculate our low use exemption, it would translate to about 0.2 pound per day of VOCs. So we believe the rule already addresses the concern that was raised by the letter.
Thank you, Sarah. Rita, go ahead, please. Welcome.
Good morning. Rita Loof, Director of Environmental Affairs for RADTIC International. We're speaking on Rule 1136 wood coatings on behalf of our over 800 members involved in ultraviolet electron beam light emitting diode technology, or UVEB LED for short. We submitted written public comments to staff many weeks ago, made comments during the various workshops. So it is very disheartening to find out that the staff presentation did not include any of our concerns. The stated goal of this rule is to transition away from PCBTF or TBAC. UV EB LED formulations do not contain these materials and thus complement the goal. We are agnostic as related to the district's proposal to ban PCBTF and TBAC. UV EB LED has been deemed as best available control technology by this district. CARB has included it in the statewide backed clearinghouse, and the EPA has listed it as lowest achievable emission rate for wood coating operations. We're concerned that the proposal acts as a barrier to the implementation of clean technology. We think the rule should exempt products like ours that benefit the environment. We have also asked for a modification to the current definition for reactive diluents because it lacks clarity. The rule exempts facilities that use less than 1 gallon per day of coating. The rule has a highest limit of 750 grams per liter. These are 6 pounds. It's 6 pounds a day, not 0.2. So we did the math. This is what the toxic, the bar, this long bar, that's what the toxic high VOC materials are getting. The short bar is what we're getting, the low VOC non-toxic materials. This rule is really bad public policy. It lacks incentives. We believe that carrots are better than sticks and can get the district actual emission reductions. This rule, by the staff's own admission, does not result in emission reductions. The solution is to provide an exemption based on emissions, not usage. You cannot treat a gallon of formaldehyde like you treat a gallon of water. And that is exactly what this rule does. It is bad public policy. We ask that you postpone it. Thank you.
Thank you, Rita. Staff?
Yeah, if I may, a couple topics here. First of all, as a reminder, this is a VOC rule, right? This is not a toxic rule. We happen to be phasing out the toxics because of the specific industry there. So VOC is a VOC rule, so it does set those limits. UVEB is a curing process. It uses various types of VOCs in its process. Some of those VOCs can be quite high. We even have some applications where it's a UVEB curing process. The VOC is so high that it needs to have pollution control. So we do not recommend exempting the process because, you know, again, we want to keep those applications, regardless of how one is curing those products, they should still meet our VOC limits. So that's the first thing. We don't believe, again, this is a barrier to this technology, as she noted, because it doesn't set the technology up in the rule. You can feel free to use any type of different types of technology you can, as long as you meet the VOC limit. Nothing precludes usage of UVEB curing in the rule. So I just want to emphasize that. With regards to reactive diluent, this is a standard definition, just so anyone knows. Reactive diluents are basically thinners, right? Imagine we put a thinner to kind of thin out your product. It's used in a variety of applications, not just UVEB. This standard is a standard definition that you can find in dozens of our coatings rules. We like to be consistent, so that definition stays the same. And again, nothing precludes this, if you're using a thinner or reactive diluent, that's great. We did, however, in response to Rita, added some discussion about this in our staff report. And at that time, she seemed satisfied with that discussion. So we didn't make this a continuing issue. And finally, with regards to the 1 pound, as Sarah had emphasized, just a way of history here, this particular exemption for what's considered low use, to put some context to it, has been in the rule since the 90s. This was designed for those folks that need to do touch up and repair. Those tend to be, we have a hard time, it's hard to regulate what sometimes those needs are. And sometimes those needs it could be high, but it's not meant to be utilized a lot. The reference to the 750 that she's referring to is a specific coating. It's only one coating category that's at 750. It's mold seal. We have worked with the manufacturers, have a very difficult time getting something lower than that limit for them on the mold seal. However, the usage of that mold seal is also very low. It's like 10 gallons a year, okay, that's being utilized here. So the number that she's referring to is taking a worst case scenario, applying it as if that 750 is being utilized throughout the year by, I don't even know what the quantity would come from. So that's why we know from a real inventory data how we come with the number that that Sarah had highlighted. So we don't see this as an issue, and we do think it's important for that industry to have that ability to do those little touch-up and repairs.
Let's continue with public comment. I've got Chris Chavez. Chris, you've got 3 minutes and welcome.
Thank you. Good morning, board. Chris Chavez, Deputy Policy Director at Coalition for Clean Air. We support the overall goal of the proposed amendments to Rule 1136, which seeks to transition away from two particularly concerning chemicals in that process that the Office of Environmental Health Hazard Assessment has found to be carcinogenic. However, we also do recognize the concern from the UV, EV, and LED coating industry, which is known for having lower emissions. We understand, and I hear the concerns that that the issues that Mike Krause just brought up. However, we really want to make sure that we're encouraging and helping out industries that are actually reducing their emissions and using lower polluting products that aren't quite as polluting, or going towards zero emissions, which is the ideal, obviously. We do think also that the continuation of the 1 gallon exemption is also concerning, and also could put some of these higher VOC emitting products into kind of at, say, equal footing with other lower polluting technologies, which could encourage their ongoing use. So I think at the end of the day, what we really would hope to see is the district finding a way to work with the industry in trying to make sure that this rule, which again we agree with the intent of, is not unintentionally or in a position where it could actually be hurting a cleaner industry, cleaner process. One of the things that we've been considering is the pre-approval or streamlined process for those chemicals that actually have less, meet low VOC and non-toxic criteria, such as a 50 gram per liter being the kind of threshold for VOC, and again, non-toxic. Is again just making that process a little bit easier for what is a cleaner industry. So just wanted to offer those comments, but again, the overall goal of banning those two particular, phasing out those two substances is something that we do support. So thank you.
Kurt, did you want to ask something now, or can you hold it, or do you want? There is, if you could just. Next, and I'm going to cut off the public comment right now, the list at Harvey Eder. So next is Howard Reagan. Howard, go ahead, please. Howard, you're muted.
Well, sorry about that. Good morning, and thank you for the opportunity to address the board. My name is Howard Reagan. I'm a partner in UV Specialties. We're a manufacturer of UV, EB, and UV LED coatings. I'm past president of RadTech International, and I started my career as a chemist designing UV and EB coatings, ultimately rising to the executive suite. I've been involved in this industry for more years than much of your staff has been alive. I attended the previous meeting on Rule 1136, at which we challenged the definition of reactive diluent and provided a more accurate one. I just read the staff's rejection of our definition, which I will read to you now. Quote, staff acknowledges the comment regarding energy curable materials, which are composed of individual monomers, oligomers, and blends that react to become part of a finished coating. However, these components are not diluents. Diluents are additives used to improve the application properties of the liquid coating, such as reducing the viscosity. They are not primary components of the coating. While the staff does not believe a revision to the rule definition is necessary, the staff report was revised to include a discussion on energy curable materials, end quote. With apologies for expressing my anger, my reaction is simple. This is a case of profound ignorance. UV-EB formulas differ in their design when compared to conventional coatings. The monomers mentioned are reactive diluents. They are low viscosity, yes. They act as diluents by reducing the viscosity of the oligomers. However, they are significantly influential in the performance of the finished coating by reacting into the system to form a part of the coating. They are primary components. They become an integral part of the finished coating by reacting into it. They are not simply a viscosity reducer, nor are they VOCs. The statement of high VOC use in UV-EB coatings made a moment ago is patently incorrect. Perhaps the staff needs to be better educated in chemistry and would be benefited by attending information on the design and formulation of UV formulas before having the audacity to make such flatly incorrect statements, especially when these statements become part of regulations. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Next is Bill Quinn. Bill, go ahead, please.
Good morning, Mr. Chair and members of the board. My name is Bill Quinn, and I'm with CEEB, the California Council for Environmental and Economic Balance. So we support this rule. We came to staff with two concerns. We asked for time for reformulations where reformulations are needed, and we were the organization that were pushing for the technology review. As you heard in Mike's presentation, we believe that we have these two. And we're real pleased with the end result. So thank you very much to your staff and to Mike, and we support the adoption. Thank you.
Thank you, Bill. Next it says Dr. UV. Go ahead, please. Doctor, you're muted. Please go ahead.
Hi, good morning, board members. My name is Doug DeLong. My company is located in Redondo Beach. I've been a leading supplier of UV technology since 1980s. Our innovations in UV, EB, LED technology, such as catheter coating systems, has revolutionized the medical manufacturing industry. On a personal level, I got into energy curable coatings because I saw it as a win-win for business and the environment. As a resident of Redondo Beach, I want clean air and also a healthy business climate. This is exactly what South Coast Air Quality Management District needs to be encouraging. Yet the Rule 1136 proposal does not help wood manufacturers who want to convert away from high polluting processes to clean processes. Let's get one thing straight. 1136 does not decrease VOC emissions by your own staff's words on page 4-1 of the staff report. Not only does it not, I repeat, not reduce emissions, but it penalizes low VOC materials by subjecting them to the same limitations as high VOC materials and toxics. The staff proposal will make it harder for businesses to transition to green technologies. The rule aims to prohibit the use of toxic materials, but UV, EB, LEDs are not formulated with these toxic compounds. A lot of them are 100% solids, no VOCs. Thus, the rule should exempt materials that already comply with the district requirements. In fact, reduce emissions over and above what the rule requires. Your staff says the rule, which as we already established will not reduce any VOCs, will impact 516 facilities in Southern California. With UV, EB, LED technology, we can help those facilities stay in California and reduce emissions. It's a win-win strategy, but it will only be possible if your staff gets out of the mindset of swinging a hammer at every business in Southern California, even those good stewards that are helping clean our UV, EB technology supports of some of the leading environmental groups in Southern California. This is because our technology is good for the environment. The current proposal is not focused on emission reductions, instead is focused on material usage. 1136 does not regulate emission levels. It regulates the number of dining room tables a company can paint, disregarding the type of paint that's used. We asked the board to postpone Rule 1136 to direct staff to reconsider an exemption for low VOC UVEB materials instead of focusing on how much is used. The rule should focus on how much pollution is released into the air. We suggest changing the rule so it applies only to processes that release less than 1 pound of VOCs per day. This would better protect air quality and encourage cleaner, safer technology. Thank you.
Thank you. The final speaker is Harvey Etter. Harvey, go ahead, please.
Hello, am I being heard?
Yes, you are, Harvey.
Okay, I'm Harvey Etter. I'm the founder and director of Public Solar Power Coalition, speaking for myself and related entities. We relate and empathize with y'all in reference to bringing in new technology, because we brought in solar, the Sunshot program and the 16 plan. It was never evaluated by this agency or CARB or EPA, and it was modeled after the moonshot. We got a shoot near the moon right now. That's how we got to the moon in the 60s, and it was from 20 to 10 to 20 under Obama to make it cost effective with fossil fuels. Fossil fuels is stored solar. There's an education here. Now, whatever they use for these things, we've got to be educated.
Thank you, Mr. Etter,
They
for
have
your
energy
comments, but that's not
requirements
related to
in
this
solar.
particular item. Thank you.
Thank you, Harvey. That concludes public comment. I know that Kurt had a comment, and then go to Vice Chair for a
Just
question.
General, I'll openly admit that a lot of the discussion about the chemical and reactions are far above my pay grade as far as understanding. But I do know that, for sitting on this board for a while, that our rules, once they get set up, last for a while. They don't get re-looked at for many terms because there's so much other ones we need to work on. I guess two-part question. There's a lot that's said by the industry that seems to be a progressive, newer industry that's better than what was the old when it comes to health and to making things, better for all of us. And then at the same time, is there a time necessity for this? If we were to say, give staff another bite of the apple to work with industry for another 30 days or 60 days and come back, and it may not change at all. Is there any sense from our staff side that they can take some of these concerns? So I hate the enemy of good be perfect, and we're not moving the ball forward, yes, but at the same time, once we do this, at least I don't think we're going to review it for a while. So I'm just going to throw that at Wayne and the rest of it.
Yeah, thank you very much for the question, Supervisor. You've really heard a gross mischaracterization of what this rule does and what we're attempting to do. And rather than me explain, I'm going to have Dr. Reese, atmospheric chemist, jurist, super smart woman, go fire away.
Stop, you're making me blush. So good morning, everybody. Yeah, as Wayne mentioned, this is kind of a large mischaracterization of what this rule does and what the impact is. Again, this is a rule to reformulate so that we can get rid of these air toxics that are being used in VOC coatings right now. It wasn't intended to further reduce VOC emissions. But as for the UV-EV technology, nothing in this rule prohibits the application or the use of that technology. The issue really is, as Mr. Krause pointed out, that the chemicals that are used in that technology sometimes can be really high in VOCs. And we've seen actual examples of this. So there's a facility here, as Mr. Krause pointed out, that uses UV-EV and has to have additional controls because the VOCs that they use in that technology are really high. We do absolutely recognize the UV-EV technology can have great potential in reducing and being low VOC applications. It's just that we need to verify what those VOC levels are so that we can make sure that the limits of our rules are followed, which we really need at the end of the day to make sure that we're able to meet air quality standards and protect public health.
And if I could add, I think in light of what Dr. Rutland had said earlier this morning, we're looking at the focusing on the removal of two carcinogens, TBAC and PCBTF. That is the function of this rule. And so, Supervisor, when you ask about the rule and sort of where we are and where we're going back, what you're seeing is a distraction from the focus of removing these carcinogens that are affecting people that use this material, to try to focus on something else to gain benefit for something that we're not looking at right now. This organization and the board has been very supportive of the UV-EVB technology. We've gone to EPA and asked for changes at the request and at the insistence, if you will, of the UVEB technology groups. We're not opposed to UVEB technology, but we are focused on ensuring that we can remove carcinogens from compounds and materials that people are using fairly often, and thereby trying to better their lives and ensure their health. So is more time going to give us an ability to move away from that focus? I don't believe so, because the focus is the removal of TBAC and PCBTF.
No, again, I appreciate that explanation. It's just generally, I understand the opponents and the opponents there. It's usually a fiscal reason, a practicality reason, something like that. And here we have scientists arguing that both sides don't really understand it. So that's, it was difficult for me to do that. So I'm putting the confidence in our staff that actually knows, but when it comes to like, no one's arguing that it's cost too much or it can't be done or the power's not there, the infrastructure's not there. It is basic understanding of the molecular function of it, which is more of my concern, that we on the same page, if we could agree on, if our team and the other scientists can agree on that's the basis, then I can see the outcomes a little clearer. So thank you.
Vice Chair?
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. No way do I subscribe to the characterization that's been made of our staff. We have a very competent staff, and I think it's a disservice to some of the comments that were made in public comment. Obviously, we, I think, have a problem in communication, obviously, between us and the UV industry, or some problem there. And I'm wondering how can we address that so that we don't have this fisticuffs, if you will, back and forth when we talk about these rules.
We can certainly give that more consideration, and maybe, Mayor, we can go back and talk with them. As I said before, this organization has always been very supportive of the technology. We've gone to bat for them with CARB, with US EPA.
I understand that.
Yeah.
Obviously, something is not being communicated.
Again, I believe that the focus here is focusing on the removal of the carcinogens. That's the focus. The focus is not on VOCs and emission reductions. It's dealing with carcinogens.
I would encourage some sort of get together with UV industry and communicate better one way or the other.
We will do so.
When you say UVEB, you're talking about two different things, ultraviolet and electron beam, yes? But we keep putting it together. And I think that leads to some of the confusion, is we say UVEB technology, but they're really two different things happening, correct?
It's part of an overall process where the materials are coated and it goes through the light and electron beam, as you said. So when you say they're different, they're combined in a process.
But not happening simultaneously. One happens and then the other happens, right?
Yes, but the organizations that are representing all of those aren't speaking. If I could add with the Supervisor Hagman's concern about the chemistry question and the reactive diluents, just keep in mind that, like, I think what was being said is not incorrect in the sense that the way that industry interprets their processes and what they define as a reactive diluent, and that's fine, we acknowledge that. But this is different because our definition has to apply to all these applications, not just UV. It's not a UV-EV rule, right? So it's fine that they have a different definition, but again, it doesn't apply in this rule. We only define those things that are actually applicable to the rule.
Supervisor Mitchell?
Thank you very much. I'm sort of in Hagman's boat, but my understanding of the rule is to really regulate the chemicals that are used in the curing process or before they come to the curing process. That's the goal of the rule. So if someone could help me understand why the industry feels that it would be a deterrent for the people who are using the UVB technology. Walk me through that part.
We're uncertain about that either because
okay, well, I'm not alone.
it's this is not the first time the industry has tried to like see how they can get like exemptions from things, and we have no problems with exemptions, right? When they warrant those. Again, as Dr. Reese noted, this is not the case with these applications. We do have applications where they have VOCs, and we do need to regulate those. I just want to add, if you recall last year, even we did acknowledge the value of a UV-EV process and the amount of time our engineers will take, and we lowered a fee actually for those applications. They did meet up with certain standards, if you recall. It was less than 50 grams per liter, I recall, and no toxics, and that was another way that the agency does support this technology, but it has to be done in a way where it's also health protective.
Thank you. Thank you,
Supervisor
Mr. Chair.
Mitchell, you're correct. And I want to be clear, there's two things in front of us that keep being discussed. One is the coatings and solvents that are being used in the removal of PCBTF and those coatings and solvents. And the second issue is the curing technology when someone uses any type of coating and solvent. And so what happens with UVB testimony and discussion is they're conflating the two. It's like, because you're using a UV-EB curing technology doesn't mean that you're using a low VOC product or a product with or without PCBTF.
On the front end.
Right. And so what we have seen in actual, applications is high VOC coatings and solvents that have been used with a UV-EB technology. So to say that somebody, just because you're using a UV-EB technology means that you're using a low VOC or a toxic-free
is not accurate.
That's not accurate. And so it's conflating the two together, and that's what our concern is. So I want to be clear so everyone understands. It's like, we understand that issue. When they come to the board, it gets very confusing because it gets all conflated and rolled up. It's like, yes, we support zero emission UV-EB curing technology, but the problem is that the coatings and solvents that they use with it are not necessarily low VOC.
Supervisor Perez?
I appreciate the discussion. I think I'm more confused now than before we started, but nonetheless, good points made on both sides. Obviously, staff, first and foremost, you are supreme, in my opinion. And it was stated already. Some folks unfortunately don't see it that way, but I believe, and I think everybody here on the dais does feel opposite from what was stated earlier. I mean, obviously, there's going to be a difference of opinion. But I will say, though, that when you have environmentalists and the business community coming together on an issue, which I have not seen in a long time, if any time, and I think there's a reason for that. And maybe people are conflating the issue. And maybe this could have been written a little bit more clearly to understand that. And that's the struggle that we're having, that I'm having for that matter. It does worry me that when I'm hearing from industry that there have been meetings, I heard that from staff too, however, that their ideas or thoughts were not necessarily placed under strong consideration for potential use within the language of what is being presented here, or maybe so, I don't know. But it does concern me that that's being said, because obviously those conversations, that's why they exist, so that we can try to work these things out. For me, at the end of the day is, and maybe you answered this already, but for folks that already are using it, how is this going to impact them? This latest technology, how is this is it going to impact them at all? Is it going to impact them in a way in which it hurt their bottom line potentially and jobs for that community or for that area or for that business? I'm just trying to understand that piece.
again, if I may, nothing in this rule prevents the use of UV-EB technology. And if that's already being in use, there's no change here that would change that operation. It's really what is being requested here by the stakeholders is a blanket exemption for that technology where we wouldn't be able to look at, regardless of the VOC content of the materials that they're using in that technology, we wouldn't be able to use them. They would get a full pass. And that's the concern that we have, because we need to have those VOC limits in place so that we can continue to make sure that we make progress on cleaning up our air.
Yeah, well, I think that's correct. I think that's fair. I think it's important that we review those type of efforts to make sure we're doing our job. All right, I don't want to get into a back and forth, but is that the case, Rita? And Rita's got something else to say, right? And I'm not sure, Mr. Chair, you want to entertain all this, but I guess my point at the end of the day, because of the fact that she's got something different to say, and obviously our staff has another mindset, I'm not ready to support this yet. I'd like to see folks come together and see where the discrepancies are. Nonetheless, though, if you want to hear Rita, then I guess we can. If you don't want to, Mr. Chair, then that's okay too.
Let me hear from Mayor Rodriguez first, and then we'll consider Rita.
Okay.
Before I comment, would it be possible to have the benefit of her?
Do you want to have her?
If you're
Okay,
with that,
Rita,
that'd be
you
great.
got 2
Thank you.
minutes to respond.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And thank you for the discussion. And I want to say that I respect the staff. I've known the staff. I've known Mike for many, many years. I used to work at the district before I joined RADTEC. So I've had that seat, and I respect the agency and the work it does. We disagree. We have a fundamental disagreement. The issue about the VOC, we have heard it before. I have done multiple Public Records Act requests asking for the so-called mythical coating that somehow somebody's manufacturing in China or somewhere else that has these high VOCs. It has never been produced. I have done multiple records requests. Staff will say that. They have never shown any evidence of that coating existing. However, in the event that it existed, we're saying don't give them the exemption. That's why we're saying give us a mass-based exemption. 1 pound a day consistent with BACT, consistent with new source review. 1 gallon of formaldehyde does not equal 1 gallon of water. Today, the 1 gallon exemption exempts toxic chemicals, and 750 grams per liter equates to 6 pounds a day. That's why I showed the chart. We calculated it. Yes, we took the worst case scenario in the rule because that is the highest limit in the rule. So that is what would be allowed. 6 pounds a day is what toxic high VOC gets. We get 0.42 pounds per day because of our low VOC content of less than 50 grams per liter. We only advocate for less than 50 grams per liter with toxic-free chemicals. If they have toxics, I cannot guarantee what's being manufactured in overseas. So regulate them. But the majority of our...
Thank you, Rita. Mayor?
Thank you. I want to start with my support of what I think I was hearing from the Supervisor Hagman and Perez of needing more time. I think we all agree about addressing these 2 compounds in the spirit of the rule before us today. There's consensus there, but I do want to also affirm the observation by Supervisor Perez. It is rare, and it's great to see a consensus today among others to hear specifically the Coalition for Clean Air commenting favorably with respect to the concerns of industry and RADTEC, those good actors that have proven technologies that are effective and not to have an unintentional harm to their efforts. Specifically today, it would be a great, the old saying, measure twice, cut once. If we could have the opportunity to take a step back, And maybe bring it back to stationary source, very specifically though, to some of the recommendations that were shared today, but also by way of the letters. So seems that there was an overlapping consensus on exploring a very specific recommendation or some comments. So to one comment I had, we all received, the rule currently includes a low use exemption that could allow up to 1 gallon per day of these materials to remain in use, including products with VOC levels as high as 750 grams per liter. Exemptions should be based on emissions rather than on volume of use. The district's rules should encourage reformulation towards materials with potential for zero VOC emissions. We urge the district, and this is from California Safe Schools, we urge the districts to include a low VOC exemption comparable to the exemptions provided for low use products. We suggest that exemption eligibility be based on actual emissions and not the numbers of gallons used. And so there's a talk of an exemption, a pathway to an exemption, and similarly RadTech, in their letter, the rule should include an exemption for materials containing less than 50 grams liters in VOC, which we heard earlier. We urge the district to include a low VOC exemption comparable to the exemption provided for low use products. So this idea of a low VOC exemption, it would be great to see that fleshed out a little bit more, maybe bring that topic specifically back again to stationary, have the Coalition for Clean Air, have RadTech, and others at the table, and then bring what an exemption would look like. Have staff bring back to us to deliberate. Yes or no, we can deliberate on that, but let's have that at the table. We don't have that at the table right now. We don't have that option at the table to deliberate. So before we move forward on this, it'd be great to bring it back to stationary, have staff work with all of those stakeholders that have been in consensus today to submit to us for consideration that potential exemption pathway, and we may ultimately say no, but we don't even have that option today. So it'd be great to bring this holistically back, not piecemeal it. Let's take maybe the next meeting, we can bring it back, or some reasonable amount of time. But as Supervisor Hagman indicated, once we move forward with these rules, train's left the building. We're not likely to be able to make those improvements. We have the opportunity now to get it as right, not perfect, but certainly there seems to be some areas of improvement. So I would ask if that's what the supervisors were getting at as far as the spirit of taking more time. I would just add a little bit more clarity as to, well, what are we going to do if we gave it more time? That's what I would suggest let's consider, and we open to further dialogue, colleagues, on what your thoughts would be on taking more time for that type of effort. Thank you.
Supervisor Hagman.
We're waiting. When it gets these complicated, I'm trying to. Is it strictly a definition thing, or what is the difference? Or would you say it's a completely different approach, or? Because if we went through all this, I hate to go back through the whole process again because we have so much going on. I was suggesting maybe go back and have this Highland discussion like we do on our board all the time, bring it back to the next meeting. Just go back and take a look and see if there's some wordsmithing that may not make everyone happy, but this goes forward. If there's a little bit on the definition part that just came out last night or something, not go through the whole thing again because I think it's been pretty well gone through. That's why I was asking earlier is would a kick it to the next meeting think you would get any other outcomes, but the staff said they don't believe they would. It's completely different fundamental worth of mindset. But that's kind of what I was originally before we got in discussion. Is there a particular wordsmith or not that you think would be productive to have more dialogue in particular or not?
So again, from my perspective, the focus is on the removal of PCBTF and TBAC. And in fact, we're bringing before you a number of rules where we're doing just that, and we've done that. And that was the direction of the board for over 5 years, to try to find ways to remove those carcinogens from compounds that our people are using so that we can better protect the workers that use those materials, protect their health, protect their lives. The issue that you're hearing that we're saying it's a completely different discussion is on the utilization of a technology that's asking for a huge exemption. And with regards to a request that we heard where data hasn't been provided, I can certainly name a facility that was required to install thermal oxidizer, as I recall, utilizing UV-EB technology. And if we haven't provided the appropriate information, I will find out about that. But from our perspective, we do take a very agnostic, a very neutral approach. And where there's the opportunity to reduce emissions, we have been very supportive of that. But that's not what this is about. This is about trying to remove carcinogens from compounds that people are using. If you want us to look at a blanket UV exemption for EV-EB technology, that's something that we can do separately. That's not part of what we're bringing back before. And so while I appreciate the desire to go back and reconnect, yes, we can do that, sure. But that's not why we're here today. And I just want to try to keep the focus on what we're trying to do and why we're here, which is to protect public health, which is to remove those carcinogens.
A point taken, but we've struck a nerve both on the EJ perspective in public comment today and in the letter submitted by the California Safe Schools. And there's consensus, as I mentioned, about the exemption approach, both by environmental justice perspective and business, both. So no one's saying that the focus of the two compounds are, as you're mentioning, we're not, our eyes on the ball on that. But this issue is come up from both perspectives, nonetheless. So how do we address that? And that's the thought of, can we take a step back, reevaluate that, come back next meeting with a recommendation that addresses those concerns that go across the board. It's not one side or the other side. There's a consensus here on that issue. So how we're addressing that issue, and that's really what I was hoping we could address per the earlier comments of needing more time by Supervisor Hagman and Supervisor Perez. And it wasn't my intent, Supervisor Hagman, to say we're starting over from scratch here at all. I was thinking this was a little more than a tweak, but not starting all over. So however we would want to define the middle of that.
And Wayne, can you elaborate a little bit more what your suggestion? If we were to pass this today, but come back with specific recommendations for this industry that may be different than the broader sense, how long do you think that would take for the team to come together for doing that? That may be specific only to this industry.
If the request is to look at granting a broad exemption from AQMD requirements to the UV-EB industry, I don't know how we can do it given the utilization of high VOC compounds. For the most part, those compounds aren't an issue. But where they are an issue, we want to make sure that we're able to assert our authority and fulfill our mission.
Okay, well, the phrase broad exemption wasn't at all what was recommended in either of the correspondence. The word broad, it was very, very specific. Again, if you want to go to the California Safe Schools, they're saying the provision of this rule shall not apply to facilities that emit less than 1 pound per day of VOCs as applied. And if you want to go to, again, the spirit of an exemption in the letter from RadTech, as I'm trying to go scroll back and forth here for a second.
If we
The
could,
rule should not include an exemption for materials containing less than 50 grams liter in VOC. We urge the district to include a low VOC exemption comparable to the exemption provided for low-use products. So again, there's more specificity than saying broad.
so Dr. Reese has gone through the calculations with regards to that specific request. If Dr. Reese could explain that again, I'd appreciate it.
Right, again, so that's a specific request for eliminating the low use exemption that's been in our rule for over 30 years at this point. When we look at the amount that's actually used under that exemption, we calculate out what the VOCs are associated with that. It turns out to be 0.2 pound per day. So it's below that 1 pound per day limit that the requester was asking for there. But I think, again, there's some conflation going on because the low use exemption is one piece. And I think some of the environmental stakeholders that were commenting on that were concerned that perhaps that was a loophole for like an increased VOC and increased use of toxics. As I've explained, it's not really that. The issue that Ms. Loof is raising is the broader issue of UV, EV technology and the fact that in general, it can be lower VOC emitting, but because it uses other compounds in that process that can have high VOCs, a broad exemption for that technology is not appropriate. Again, we encourage the use of that technology where we can verify that the chemicals used in it are low VOC contents because overall it would be better. But our problem is that sometimes those chemicals are higher VOCs. And so there's two issues really at play here.
Mayor Lockdawson and then Supervisor Perez.
Hi, thank you. I feel really uncomfortable making policy from the dais on something that we're just learning about, something particularly as technical as this. And I'm looking at Wayne because I'm Supervisor Hagman. I feel your pain. You're hearing from probably a majority of your board that nobody's comfortable with this and we don't like it. And I'm just hearing arguments about I'm right, no, you're right, no. What do you want to do? Because it doesn't look like it's going to pass today. What is a path forward here?
It's a great question.
What is reasonable for staff? It's either going to fail or you have option to bring it back in some other way, shape or form, or some other discussion.
We can try to have discussions with the parties. I think you've all heard a very frank and honest perspective in terms of why we're here. When I had said a broad exemption for UV, EV technology, this rule again doesn't mention UV, EV technology. It's focused on the phasing out of TBAC and PCBTF. So normally I would say we'll bring back a rule that will be very specific to what it is that we're trying to accomplish. But what you're hearing is, well, hey, if you're trying to do that, we want this too. It shouldn't be conflated with what we're trying to do, which is to remove TBAC and PCBTF. Yeah. We could talk to the manufacturer. We can move this to next month, and we can have a report out in Stationary Source Committee to talk about further where we are on this, where we see that, and then we can take direction from Stationary Source Committee in terms of whether to advance or to bring back or to continue discussions.
I appreciate that, Wayne. And the reason I'm saying that is I'm just a practical gal. I think you know that about me. And I feel like you're saying it shouldn't be conflated, but the problem is it is being conflated and we're
Yes.
having this discussion up here. So how do we work through that in some way that is acceptable and get you off the lot, but also it makes the board more comfortable with the decision they're making. That's all I'm asking.
Supervisor Mitchell.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm really kind of comfortable for myself in my own vote, calling the question and voting today. However, I'm hearing from my colleagues. I think what's important when we, in essence, kick the can down the road to a future committee and a future board meeting, that we're clear about our expectation about what will be different. And so I'm not sure what, I think the board should articulate what you need in a future action. If it is a fundamental difference of opinion between two parties, I'm not sure if more time will change that. If more time gives the board more time to understand the particulars of the argument, then let's say that. But I just think that if we're going to kick the can, let's be clear about what we want or what we are needing to be able to make a definitive decision at a future date, as opposed to kind of this nebulous, we're not comfortable. I just think we owe that to the staff and to ourselves, so we get what we need to be able to make a definitive decision. I just think that's important.
I'll move a.
Wait, Supervisor President.
Yeah, just very quickly, I appreciate that. Thank you, Holly. I guess if I want to get down to a specific, and maybe it is not specific enough, but I agree, there should not be carte blanche for anyone. A review happens in any organization all the time on policies and procedures, and we want to get better. And even though that perhaps there are entities out there, businesses that are using backed type of technology, if ultimately emissions are still very high, we should be able to review that. I think that's the common ground there. And so I'm not advocating at all for everyone that's already using backed technology should be exempt. No, well, I guess let me flip that. Although you are using that, or anyone who's not using it, you should be open enough to be willing to do a review of what's going on in your facility, because it may be impacting the quality of air and ultimately our public health. And if not, great. But just because you're using backed technology doesn't mean it's entirely right. Why? Because you just said it could be different solvents that are used in the front end. So that's my specific, I guess, and that's where my head is. So if we need more time for that, although I don't know, we need more time for that, but if we need more time for that, then, and to better understand this issue, then I'm okay with not voting today. But if we can get industry and the enviros, as well as our staff, to agree to that, I think maybe that's where we're trying to go. I'm not sure, but.
Any more discussion, Larry? Go ahead.
Yeah, I think as chair of the Stationary Source Committee, we did hear this, but a lot of these issues were not brought up at the time. We need further, I believe, further discussion to understand these issues, and I would support bringing it back to the stationary for further discussion of all of the issues that we've been talking about today.
Okay.
Any more comments?
I'll second that.
And just to comment on that motion, I'll support it too, although I tend to lean with Supervisor Mitchell. I'm not sure. I think there are conflating these issues, but I'll support the motion. But I'm really concerned about as we put these rules off, you've got a 1-year sell-through period, a 1-year use period. We just keep putting it down the road with these, as you said, kick the can down the road. These are carcinogenic substances, as Dr. Rutland has told us. There's people getting harmed by these every day that are working. So I've got real concern putting it off too long, but a month I'll go along with. And hopefully you can come to some type of agreement, which I doubt, but benefit of the doubt, I'll give that to the board. So roll call, please. There's been a motion and a second.
Mayor
Clarity on what
Lock-Dawson.
the motion is,
Put
please.
verification, Larry, send it back to stationary.
I'll bring it back to stationary to discuss the issues that have been brought up today and see if we can better educate the board members on the committee and then bring it back to the board.
When would you want to bring it back to the board in May?
In May.
Okay.
Stationary in May and then back to the board, no, stationary in April, back to the board in May.
Hey, is that good?
Yeah, that was what I was going to ask.
And was that the second, agree with that?
Sure.
Yep. Stationary in April and back to the board in May. Is everybody clear? Okay.
Mayor Lock-Dawson. Senator
Aye.
Delgado,
Yeah.
Yes.
Supervisor Hackman, Supervisor Mitchell,
Aye.
Councilmember Nazarian is absent. Supervisor Wynn,
All them bringing it back to stationary stores aren't even on the committee.
Supervisor Wynn,
I'm sorry, aye.
thank you.
I'm sorry.
Vice Mayor Olmos is absent. Board Member Padilla Campos is absent. Supervisor Perez,
Aye.
Mayor Rodriguez. Dr. Rutland,
Aye. Yes.
Vice Chair McCallum,
Yes.
and Chair Caccioti.
Yes,
Motion passes 10-0 with 3 absent.
thank you. Got one more item, item 31.
Good morning, Chair Caccioti and board members. I'll be discussing our Rule 1144 amendments. Next slide, please. So this rule regulates the VOC content for metalworking fluids. Metalworking fluids are the liquids that are used in machine shops to remove debris, to cool the parts, to provide corrosion protection. We have many thousands of machine shops in this area, most of them that don't have permits with us. So we work closely with the manufacturers of these fluids in order to regulate the VOC content. And we're here, like the other two rules right before this, to address PCBTF and TBAC. Next slide, please. So you had a lot of discussion about those two materials. They're carcinogenic, and we want to get them out of a lot of our rules, including this one. This will be our 8th rule that addresses those two compounds. We'll have many more after this, but it is important to us as to try and get these out because of the health implications for this material. Otherwise, Rule 1144 is great. And so we have no plans on doing anything else other than addressing the PCBTF and TBAC. We did reach out to the manufacturers of the materials, and we went through a survey process. We didn't get great results from the survey, so we did reach out to the association, the Independent Lubricant Manufacturers Association, to help us poll their membership about the usage of these two compounds. We found through that process that for the most part, these two chemicals are not used in metalworking fluids. So that was great, and we believe that a accelerated phase out of these two materials is possible. Next slide, please. So what we're planning is a phase out of the manufacturing of these materials in our area in 2027, followed by a sell-through deadline of 2028, and a final use in 2029. However, we don't expect any of these to be all that relevant because they're not using them now, and our messages don't start using them. We are including a buffer, though, in this timeline, just in case that word didn't get out to everybody. Next slide, please. So we don't expect there to be any socioeconomic impacts because essentially they're not being used right now, nor do we think that there'll be any environmental impacts because we're just prohibiting something that hasn't happened yet, and we'll be preparing through the CEQA process a notice of exemption. We're not aware of any key issues. Next slide, please. So we're proposing or recommending that you determine that Rule 1144 is exempt from CEQA and you amend the rule. Thank you, and that concludes my presentation.
Questions for staff? Dr. Rutland? No? Let's start it off again. I only have one question. You know, whether it's aerospace, wood products, metalworking, and I understand the workers of process manufacturing, it's carcinogenic. Once it's complete, you know, example, there's furniture in your home or metalworking, the product, is there off-gassing of this stuff that goes on for weeks or years? Not only in the production, but because I was concerned going back to what we all have furniture, it's coated, comes from all around the world. We're all doing products like this, metal will get to us somehow. Does off-gassing occur in these products?
These products, in these two cases, the PCBTF and the TBAC, they're very volatile materials. So they'll evaporate rather rapidly. Most of the products that are being utilized, like coatings and things like that, they're intended to dry, and that means that those solvents will have evaporated off. So if there's anything that's coming, you know, after somebody's shipped it, it's going to be trace amounts.
Okay, not like when you use paint, certain paints that aren't low VOC, it kind of off-gasses for months or years.
Yes. Well, and we'll be addressing the architectural coatings in the future. But yeah, there'll be trace amounts that might evaporate off, but in comparison to when they're actually using them, it's not even close.
Great. Any questions, any public comment on this item in the auditorium? Oh, question, sorry, Doctor.
So for these two molecules, for anything that they're coated on, whether it's a shoe or a metal pipe or a jacket, we got to come up with a rule every single time? Because they're going to be unhealthy on a jacket, but like healthy on a shoe? Like, I mean, I'm just curious.
So we do need to address it in all those different types of aspects. And we've gone through a 5-year process trying to prepare for these moments so that we can address it in every place where it's being used. So to us, whether it's being used on a shoe or a jacket or a metalworking fluid or wood, to us, everywhere it's being used, we want to phase it out.
If we could just add, Dr. Rutland, we do have very specific rules for very specific products that are used in various sectors. There is another way that we could look at it, and some of the other air districts throughout the state have done this differently. They each lead to their own unique set of challenges. But if we were to include this in our Rule 1401, which deals a lot with health risk, the potency of those two compounds have created a problem in other districts that have done it that way, where they can't get permitted for the use because they fail their health risk assessment. And that's when I talked earlier about we're trying to reduce carcinogenic exposure. But given the way that we're structured, where we have very industry-specific rules, we believe that's the more appropriate way to deal with those individual sectors than to do sort of the broad one and then have to deal with the individual specific examples that may come up. And that's why we're doing all of these rules and why we didn't try to do the broad suite.
Cool. Any more comments or questions for staff? And any public comment in the auditorium? No. Online, I'll give you a moment to raise your hand. This is our last item on the agenda, item 31. Moved by Supervisor Hagman, second by Mayor McCallum. Roll call, please.
Mayor Lock Dawson,
Aye.
Senator Delgado,
Aye.
Supervisor Hagman, Supervisor Mitchell,
Aye.
Councilmember Nazarian is absent, Supervisor Nguyen, Vice Mayor Olmos is absent, Board Member Padilla Campos is absent, Supervisor Perez is absent, Mayor Rodriguez,
Aye.
Dr. Rutland,
Aye.
Vice Chair McCallum,
Yes.
and Chair Cacchiotti.
Yes,
Motion passes 9-0 with 4 absent.
thank you. That will conclude our meeting. I'll go to Bay regarding closed session.
Yes. It is necessary to recess to closed session pursuant to Government Code Section 54957.6 to confer with labor negotiators, agency designated representative A. John Olvera, Deputy Executive Officer, Administrative and Human Resources, employee organizations, Teamsters, Local 911, and South Coast AQMD Professional Employees Association, and unrepresented employees, Executive Officer, General Counsel, designated deputies, and management confidential employees. It is also necessary to recess to closed session pursuant to Government Code Section 54957B1 to confer regarding performance evaluations as specified below, title Executive Officer, title General Counsel. It is also necessary to assess to closed session pursuant to Government Code Section 54956.9A and 54956.9D1 to confer with its counsel regarding pending litigation which has been initiated formally and to which the South Coast AQMD is a party. The actions are Renai America Corp. et al. v. South Coast AQMD, United States Court of Appeals, Ninth Circuit case number 25-5129, appealing U.S. District Court, Central District of California case number 2:24-CV-10482, challenge to Rule 1146.2 requiring transition to zero emission boilers and process heaters. Center for Biological Diversity, East South Coast AQMD, Governing Board of the South Coast AQMD, and DOEs 1 through 10 inclusive. Defendants, Harbor Commission of the Port of Los Angeles, Harbor Commission of the Port of Long Beach, DOEs 11 and 20 inclusive. Real parties and interests, Los Angeles Superior Court case number 25 STCP 04685, challenge to Ports Cooperative Agreement. No reportable actions were taken today in closed session. The meeting is adjourned.